There is a reason this person keeps reaching for their phone and then suddenly putting it back down. And the reason is much bigger than you think. They are not simply ignoring you. They are not sitting comfortably somewhere pretending you never mattered. In fact, the truth may be the complete opposite. This person feels like they are literally not allowed to text you. Not allowed to call you. Not allowed to sit down and have the conversation they desperately want to have with you. And once you understand what has been happening behind the silence, you may never look at their absence the same way again. Because somebody knows what this person feels for you. Somebody knows exactly what could happen if the two of you finally spoke honestly. And that person has been doing everything possible to keep this conversation from happening. But something changed recently. A secret slipped out. A conversation happened behind closed doors. And your name was brought up in a way that made everyone in that room suddenly uncomfortable. Because this person finally admitted something they had been hiding. They said they still think about you. They said they still wonder what you are doing. And then came the confession nobody expected. They admitted that if they were completely free to make their own decision, they would contact you. Immediately. That confession changed everything. Because until that moment, certain people around them believed the distance between you was permanent. They thought enough time had passed. They thought the silence had erased the connection. They thought this person had finally moved on. They were wrong. Very wrong. Because your person has been carrying an unfinished conversation inside them for longer than anyone realizes. There are words they never got to say. There are explanations you never received. There are emotions they buried because admitting them would have forced them to make a decision they were terrified to make. And now those emotions are becoming impossible to hide. The strangest part is that someone close to them noticed it first. They noticed how your person reacted when something reminded them of you. They noticed the sudden silence. The change in their face. The way they would become distant whenever relationships were discussed. And eventually, someone asked the question your person had been avoiding. Do you still have feelings for them? For a moment, your person said nothing. That silence answered the question before they ever opened their mouth. Then they finally admitted it. Yes. The feelings never completely disappeared. But that was only the beginning. Because someone else in their life does not want you to know this. This could be a friend. A relative. Someone romantically interested in them. Or simply someone whose influence has become much stronger than it should be. This person has convinced your person that contacting you would create problems. They have repeated the same warnings again and again. Leave it alone. Don't reopen that door. You'll regret talking to them. They've probably moved on. Don't embarrass yourself. And your person listened. At least on the outside. But privately, something completely different has been happening. They have imagined conversations with you. They have typed messages and deleted them. They have opened your contact and stared at it. They have wondered whether you would answer. They have imagined hearing your voice again. And there was one particular night when they came dangerously close to breaking every rule that had been placed around them. Their phone was already in their hand. Your name was right there. The message had begun. And the first sentence was something incredibly simple. "I need to tell you the truth." They stared at those words. Their heart was racing. Because they knew that once that message was sent, everything could change. But before they sent it, something happened. Someone interrupted them. And your person immediately closed the screen. That moment might sound small. It wasn't. Because the person who interrupted them realized exactly what was happening. They asked who your person was texting. Your person tried to avoid answering. That created suspicion. And eventually your name came out. The reaction was immediate. Absolutely not. Those words were stronger than your person expected. And suddenly the situation turned into an argument. Why? Because the person standing in front of them was afraid. Not afraid that you would hurt your person. Afraid that you would discover something. There is information connected to the separation, misunderstanding, or distance between you that you were never given. Someone influenced the story. Someone gave advice based on their own interests. Someone may have exaggerated something you said or did. Or your person may have been encouraged to believe that your silence meant you didn't care. And because the two of you never had the complete conversation, that version of events was never challenged. Think about how powerful that is. Two people can care deeply about each other and still remain separated when neither one has the full truth. And this is exactly why somebody does not want the conversation to happen. Because one honest conversation could expose everything. Your person could ask you directly what happened. You could tell them what you experienced. They could tell you what they were told. And suddenly both of you might realize that pieces of the story never matched. That possibility terrifies someone. But your person is beginning to notice the contradictions. Recently, they remembered something you once said. At the time, they didn't understand its importance. Now they do. Your words don't match the version of you they were later encouraged to believe. And once that realization entered their mind, they started questioning everything. Why were they discouraged from speaking to you? Why did someone become uncomfortable whenever your name came up? Why were they constantly told that you didn't care? Why was communication treated like something dangerous? And most importantly, why does someone else seem so invested in making sure you two never compare stories? That final question has been keeping your person awake. Because they are starting to realize that this was never only about protecting them. Someone had something to gain from the distance. Maybe they wanted control. Maybe they wanted your person's attention. Maybe they believed they knew what was best. Maybe they were protecting another secret. Whatever the reason, the influence was real. But it is weakening. And something happened very recently that pushed your person closer to finally breaking free. They heard someone talking about you. Your person wasn't supposed to hear the conversation. They were nearby, and your name suddenly came up. At first, they stayed quiet. Then they heard something that shocked them. Someone said that keeping the two of you apart had been for the best. Your person immediately wondered why anyone would describe it that way. Keeping you apart? That wording mattered. Because it suggested intention. Not coincidence. Not bad timing. Not two people naturally drifting apart. Keeping you apart. Your person couldn't stop thinking about those words. Later, they confronted someone. The conversation became tense almost immediately. They asked whether anyone had deliberately interfered. The answer they received was defensive. Too defensive. And that told your person everything they needed to know. Something had happened. Maybe not every detail was intentional. Maybe nobody planned the entire situation from the beginning. But someone had absolutely encouraged the distance. And now your person feels betrayed. Because they realize they gave other people's voices more importance than their own heart. That is the part hurting them most. They could have contacted you. They could have asked questions. They could have listened to your side. Instead, they allowed fear and outside influence to control their decision. And now they are wondering whether they waited too long. That is why they keep checking your world from a distance. They want to know whether someone new has entered your life. They want to know whether you still remember them. They want to know whether the door is completely closed. But they are terrified of discovering the answer. Because your person knows something they haven't admitted aloud. If you told them you no longer cared, it would hurt more than they are prepared to handle. The silence gives them uncertainty. And uncertainty still contains hope. But a direct answer? That would make everything real. This is why their behavior appears contradictory. One day they feel determined to contact you. The next day they disappear emotionally. One moment they tell themselves, "I am going to say everything." Hours later, fear returns. But the cycle cannot continue forever. Something is approaching that will force a decision. And the person who has been discouraging communication knows it. That is why the pressure around your person has recently increased. More questions. More advice. More warnings. More attempts to redirect their attention somewhere else. But those attempts are having the opposite effect. The more someone tells your person not to think about you, the more your person wonders why. And curiosity is turning into suspicion. Suspicion is turning into anger. And anger is finally giving them courage. There is another secret. Your person has defended you recently. Someone made a negative comment about you, expecting your person to agree. They didn't. Instead, your person became noticeably serious. They said something like, "You don't actually know them the way I do." The room became quiet. Because that sentence revealed something. Your person still feels protective toward you. Even after everything. Even after the distance. Even after all the silence. Someone noticed this and later questioned them privately. Why are you still defending this person? And your person's answer surprised them. Because not everything was their fault. That statement represents a massive shift. Before, your person was willing to accept a simple story about what happened. Now they aren't. Now they are recognizing their own mistakes. They are recognizing the influence of other people. And they are recognizing something even more painful. You may have been waiting for an explanation that never came. Your person knows this. They have replayed the ending repeatedly. They remember the things they said. They remember what they didn't say. They remember moments when they could have chosen honesty and instead chose silence. And now they understand how confusing that silence may have been for you. There is guilt here. Deep guilt. But underneath that guilt is something stronger. A desire to correct what happened. Your person doesn't simply want to send, "Hey." That is exactly why contacting you has become so difficult. They know a casual message would be dishonest. They know they cannot return pretending nothing happened. If they come back, they have to explain themselves. They have to tell you why they disappeared. They have to tell you who influenced them. They have to admit what they believed. And they may have to apologize for something they once blamed entirely on you. That requires vulnerability. And your person has been afraid of vulnerability for a long time. But now the pressure inside them is becoming stronger than the pressure outside them. There is a sentence they desperately want to say to you. "I should have talked to you instead of listening to everyone else." That sentence has been sitting inside their heart. And once it comes out, the entire story changes. Because then you will understand that the silence was not as simple as it looked. But there is still one more layer. Someone around your person believes that if the two of you reconnect, they will lose influence. That is the hidden motive. Your connection with this person was stronger than certain people were comfortable with. You made your person think independently. You challenged them. You made them question things. You understood parts of them other people could not easily reach. And whether intentionally or unintentionally, that threatened someone who was accustomed to being the most influential voice in their life. So whenever your person moved toward you, doubt appeared. Whenever they felt confident about you, somebody introduced another question. Whenever they wanted to communicate, someone reminded them of the worst possible outcome. Slowly, fear replaced trust. But real feelings don't disappear simply because somebody tells you they should. They go underground. They hide. They wait. And eventually something brings them back to the surface. For your person, that something was a memory. A very specific memory involving you. It wasn't necessarily a dramatic moment. It may have been something ordinary. A conversation. A laugh. Something you did when they were struggling. A moment when you understood them without needing a long explanation. Recently, that memory returned unexpectedly. And it destroyed the story they had been telling themselves. Because they realized something. The person they were warned about and the person they remembered were not the same. That contradiction became impossible to ignore. Your person started asking themselves, what if I was wrong? What if I misunderstood everything? What if they were waiting for me to speak? What if somebody else shaped my decision? And then came the most frightening question. What if I lost someone important because I was afraid to have one conversation? That question changed them. Now, when people tell them not to contact you, they don't automatically agree. They become quiet. They observe. They question motives. And there was recently another confrontation. This one was more serious. Your person finally said that their relationships are their own business. Someone didn't like that. They accused your person of making a mistake. But your person responded differently this time. They said they needed to make their own choices. That was the moment the balance of power began changing. The invisible permission they thought they needed from everyone else started disappearing. Because your person is beginning to understand that nobody can permanently forbid an adult heart from having an honest conversation. People can pressure. They can advise. They can manipulate. They can create fear. But eventually the decision belongs to the person holding the phone. And your person knows that. This is where everything becomes unpredictable. Because they have begun preparing for the conversation. Not necessarily writing the exact message yet. Preparing emotionally. They are thinking about what they would say if you answered. They are thinking about what questions you might ask. They are imagining whether you would be angry. Whether you would be cold. Whether you would be emotional. Whether you would simply say, "Why now?" That question frightens them most. Why now? Because they know you deserved communication earlier. And they don't have a perfect answer. The closest thing to the truth is this. They were afraid. They were influenced. They were confused. And they thought time would make their feelings disappear. It didn't. Time actually made certain things clearer. Your absence showed them exactly what your presence meant. And now another realization has hit them. They may have judged your value based on other people's opinions instead of their own experience with you. That realization carries enormous regret. Because when they remember you, they don't remember the warnings first. They remember how they felt around you. They remember the comfort. The chemistry. The strange sense of familiarity. The moments when conversation flowed effortlessly. And they remember how difficult it was to pretend none of that mattered afterward. Your person tried distractions. They tried staying busy. They tried convincing themselves they had made the right decision. They may even have entertained attention from somebody else. But comparisons kept happening. A new conversation would remind them of how you spoke. A new person would react differently than you did. A certain song, location, phrase, or time of day would suddenly pull their mind backward. And they hated that they couldn't control it. But there is something even more surprising. Someone who once supported keeping you apart may now be changing their mind. They have watched your person become quieter. They have watched them carry regret. And they are beginning to realize that forcing distance didn't solve anything. This person recently said something that shocked everyone involved. Maybe you should just talk to them. Your person didn't respond immediately. But inside, those words hit like thunder. Because for the first time, somebody from the same circle that encouraged silence was giving permission for communication. And suddenly the wall didn't feel as solid. But another person strongly disagreed. That disagreement exposed the hidden tension. Why do you care so much whether I talk to them? Your person finally asked. There was no convincing answer. And that may be the exact question that eventually exposes everything. Because if somebody's intentions were truly innocent, they shouldn't panic over one honest conversation. Your person now understands that. And they are getting closer to choosing truth over fear. There is still hesitation. There is still nervousness. But the difference is that before, they were trying to convince themselves never to contact you. Now they are trying to find the courage to do it. That is a completely different battle. And when they finally reach out, the first message may be surprisingly simple. Not a giant confession. Not an emotional novel. Something small. Something designed to test whether the door is open. Maybe your name. Maybe a greeting. Maybe, can we talk? But behind those few words will be months of emotion. Regret. Fear. Longing. Confusion. And a truth that has been waiting far too long. Because the message itself isn't the real revelation. The conversation afterward is. Your person has something to tell you about why they disappeared. Something about who influenced them. Something about what they were told. And something about what they discovered afterward. But before they can tell you, they need to know one thing. Will you listen? They don't expect you to instantly forgive everything. They know they may have hurt you. They know they cannot erase the past. What they want is the opportunity they should have created long ago. The opportunity for both of you to speak without outside voices in the room. Just you. And them. Truth against truth. Memory against memory. And once that conversation begins, there is one revelation that may shock you more than anything else. Your person never wanted the final ending to happen the way it did. They expected another conversation. They thought somehow there would be another chance. But pride entered. Then fear. Then outside influence. Then too much time passed. And after enough silence, both sides began assuming things that were never actually confirmed. Your person now realizes how dangerous assumptions can become. Because they may have spent all this time grieving something that could have been clarified through one honest conversation. That thought is becoming unbearable.